Well, hello and good morning. I'm coming to you a little bit early today. My day is jam-packed, and I wanted to come to you. I wanted to share with you this unusual passage from the gospel lesson today. My name is Brian Martin, and every Sunday at this time I present What Was Jesus Thinking? And it's an effort to get inside the mind of Jesus and to discover what's going on and why is he doing, saying, and responding in the way that he does in particular situations. Now, today's passage is awkward at the very least. And frankly, when it comes down to it, I'm going to tell you I disagree with what Jesus did here in this particular situation. And you may wonder, who in the world am I to disagree with Jesus, right? Well, fortunately, I do not have any theological ties. I do not belong to any particular school of thought. I'm not conservative. I'm not liberal. I'm not Baptist. I'm not Episcopalian. I'm just somebody who likes Jesus a lot, and I happen to have been trained theologically, so I know how to think about these things. And I want to share with you a really difficult passage and ask you, what would you do in this particular situation at this particular time? So, are you up for a challenge today? I am. So here we go. This today, the gospel lesson is from Matthew chapter 15, and it's verses 21 through 28. And here's the background. There's some religious leaders who came to town to check on Jesus. They came from Jerusalem and they came to hang out and to watch Jesus. So Jesus is under the scrutiny of these people who represent the prevailing religious culture of the day. So I can ask you this question, and this would be insightful for you. What is the prevailing culture that you live in today? And right now in America, the country is deeply divided between the right and the left. And it's very interesting to see what prevailing culture people ascribe to. Now, this is something that Jesus had to deal with also, because there was an entire organization, a religious organization, that was deeply rooted in the history and the tradition of Israel. And it was compromised by its affiliation with the Roman government. And Jesus didn't like this at all. And so he railed against them. But when you come to this passage, we find something really awkward that happens. Jesus travels to a region called Tyre and Sidon, which is up towards modern day Lebanon today. And there he encounters a particular woman. All right, and so this is where the passage takes us. Are you ready? Okay, here we go. Then the Pharisees and the scribes came to Jesus from Jerusalem and said, why do you just, well, that's the passage where they came. Here's the correct reading. Jesus left that place and he went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Just then, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and started shouting, have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon. All right, so there we go. We got the whole situation there. We have a Canaanite woman. So, what is a Canaanite woman? Well, a Canaanite woman is different than a Hebrew or a Jewish woman. She's from a different culture altogether. They have a different religion. They have different ways of doing life. And they are a different group of people. So, not only is she Canaanite, but she's woman. Now, we don't have much of a problem with that because we find that Jesus interacts with women pretty comfortably in the New Testament. But here's a difficult situation. Here's a woman who is distressed, and she's distressed because her child is having a difficult time. Okay, so when you happen across somebody who is a mother who has a sick child. What is your response? How do you respond to that? Well, you do whatever you can. At least in my culture and in my frame of reference, you do everything you can to help that woman, that child. And if you happen to have particular gifts and skills and talents that are particularly relevant for that particular person at that particular time, certainly you impose, you use your gifts, your skills, and talents at that particular time, right? I mean, that's what I would do. I think that's what anybody would do. But that's not what Jesus did. Now, listen, this is really a difficult passage to read. It's troubling. So listen to this carefully because his response, in my frame of reference, is really awkward, to say the very, very least. So, my daughter is tormented by a demon, but he did not answer her at all. And his disciples kept urging him, saying, "Send her away, for she keeps shouting after us." And he answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and she knelt before him. "Lord, help me." Now, this is really interesting. Now, while I'm thinking about this, from trying to understand what was Jesus thinking. Now, I'm not going to get caught up in what the woman was thinking. I have a really good idea about what she was thinking, by the way. She's a desperate woman. She's a desperate mother who is very, very concerned about her child. All right? And Jesus' response to the disciples when he ignores her and he just keeps on moving along, he says, "I've just come to the house of Israel." Okay, but here is a woman. Well, she's Canaanite. "I've come for the house of Israel." What did he say? He said, "Send her away. I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." The lost sheep of the house of Israel. Well, there's a lot of them, I'm sure, and I know that's a lot of work. But here's a man who's got the gifts, the skills, the talents, and the tools, and he can help, and he's refusing to help. All right, we have a persistent woman here, a persistent mother. Aren't they all? Don't mothers want the best for their children? Right now, mothers in our area are coping with, what do you do with your kids now that they're at home going to school? How do you take care of all of them? And they have this huge dilemma, and they're trying to struggle with that. And so they're doing everything they can, and people are helping right and left, trying to figure out what to do. And so he goes and he says, and she comes before him and she knelt before him, "Lord, help me." Now listen to his response, because if the first response was troubling, this is even more troubling. He answered, "It's not fair to take the children's food and to throw it to the dogs." Okay, what was Jesus thinking? It's very, very challenging. Very, very challenging. She, though, she says to him, "Lord, yes, Lord, even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Now, what happens next is that Jesus ends up helping the woman. And some people have said, well, what he was doing was he was testing her faith. Or some people were saying that he was working with her somehow or another so that she would be better off. I don't see it in the passage. And you know what? It's like I said, who am I? I get it. I know. But I think I have an answer for what happened here. And I don't know if my answer is correct, but and it's going to be troubling to some people, but I think I have an answer. Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith." So there's this dramatic turnaround in the way that he's responding to this woman. And the dramatic turnaround is that he says, "Woman, great is your faith." And so that would lead some theologians and some people to say that what this was a test for the woman to find out what her faith was like and what she was going to do. "Let it be done to you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly. Okay, well, my problem with this is the two things that Jesus said, and I don't get why he said it. It just doesn't make sense to me. The first thing he said was that send her away. He said, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And so there's no mercy, there's no kindness, there's no healing, there's no forgiveness, there's no discipleship, there's no for the house, for anybody who doesn't come from the house of Israel. That's a troubling statement. Because I believe that if there's somebody who's in need of mercy or training or loving or caring or kindness or any good thing, it should not be withheld from them. Now that's just me, okay? And then he goes on and says, it's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. That disparaging remark really troubles me. And I don't care if you say, well, he was testing her faith. I don't believe that's the right way to respond to a person who has a need, even if you're wanting to check what their faith is like. I believe that there's better ways that he could have discovered what her faith was like. So, what was Jesus thinking? Now, what I think may have happened in this particular situation, and I could be totally wrong, and I get that, right? But we forget that the time of Jesus' ministry was when he was between the age of 30 and 33. And that's an important consideration, because when we read about Jesus, we always deify him, and we always think that he has incredible wisdom and that he's always right in everything that he does. And there's a school of thought that says Jesus was 100% divine and Jesus was 100% human. Well, if there was ever a situation where the humanity of Jesus is revealed, I believe it's here. Because I do not think that that is the best way to respond. And I do think that that response represents the type of thinking that might be more common in a young person who might be more spontaneous, more off the hip than a measured response of a person who had more wisdom and more maturity in life. And you might say, well, how in the world can you say that? Because that's Jesus. Well, I happen to ascribe to the view that in spite of the fact of what you might believe about his 100% divinity, Jesus was also 100% human. And I think that is good news for us, because it should make us pause and make us think about the way that we respond to the various situations that come across us in life. And especially now during COVID-19, the political unrest that our country is having, which is not getting any better and may escalate as time goes on, what then should our response be? First of all, I'm going to say this. We need to be mindful and aware of the predominant culture and how the predominant culture manipulates the minds of people. Because what we are in our hearts, beyond the culture that prevails, is that you and I were born, and in our essence, are loving, kind people. And that's demonstrated by the way that most people care for and love their children and their families. Notice I did the big qualifying most people, because I understand that there's a lot of people who didn't have a loving, caring family growing up. I understand that. But that's where people learn how to be loving and kind. And it's in our hearts. That's what we do. So the essence of who we are is not belonging to a particular culture or a particular point of view. We've been made to be loving, kind people. That's our first part of who we are. And so we need to be aware of the culture that we are in and how we respond to it. And let's give Jesus kudos because he is aware of the culture that he is struggling against in Jerusalem and in Rome. Let's be aware of that. Next, the second thing that we need to do is that we need to think about things more clearly as we respond to them. So there's a lot of things that are going on in the world right now that represent all kinds of political and theological poles, one way or the other. What is the loving, kind response to the world that we live in today? What is the loving kind? How do we respond to particular situations? What is the loving kind response? And here is a blatant example. When I see somebody who's hurting, needing love, needing nurture, which are all of our gifts, every one of us can do that. We can all love somebody who has a child who is difficult for one reason or another. And we can be supportive because we've been there and we know what that's like. And we can respond with love and grace in every particular situation. We have to think it through, though. We have to go through a mind of wisdom and discernment so that we can respond in a loving and a kind way. And that's challenging. I get it. That's very, very challenging in the world today. But decide who you are in your being. Are you a loving, kind person that you were made to be? And can you respond to situations with love and kindness? Because that's the way that we were made to be. Or are we going to ignore people because they're Canaanite or because they're women in their need? No, we can't do that. Ultimately, Jesus responded with love. But I'm saying it took him a minute to get there. I would hope that all of our missed opportunities would come to our minds and we would say, yes, I've been there also. I've made misjudgments about people. I've categorized people as A, B, C, or D when I just should have responded in love. Help one another by responding with love. Hey, thank you for joining me. I'm going to leave a link. It's not there quite yet, but probably if you're listening to this later on, there's going to be a link there to all of my videos, including the videos that I have from the two books that I've read or that I'm reading. The Eternity book, Eternity is the E in love, and the O book, Oxytocin is the O in love, are at my YouTube channel, and I'll leave the link there for all of them, including all of my What Was Jesus Thinking talks from the past. I'm Brian Martin. Thank you for being with me today. I hope that you have a blessed day. Bye-bye.